How are you doing, folks? Did you see that list of speakers we have today there? It goes by fast, I know, but I am so thrilled with today's panel. Personally, I handpicked every single one of them. That's how excited I am. And they all bring a little different flavor to the discussion we're going to have today, which is all about how to turbocharge your appointment setting. And it sounds, like don't we all want to turbocharge our appointment setting? Of course we do. But saying it and doing it are two very, very different things. And to make matters worse, I don't know if you've noticed, but 2020 has been a bit of an interesting economic climate to focus on the whole appointment setting process, whether it's a small little thing they call a pandemic, or it's the sudden work from home situation where you've either lost sight of the team or you have difficulties monitoring their performance, or even worse, the people you're trying to reach out to are no longer available because they've been, reduced because of a lack of business, or they're not at their desk anymore. My goodness, can it get any more complex and challenging than that? And that's exactly why we brought these people together. My name is Daryl Praill. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at VanillaSoft, and I'm really excited to have today's conversation. Welcome to our live stream. It's a lot of fun. We do these things. You never know what's going to happen. Is it going to stay live? Is it not going to stay live? So let's just go into the ground rules, quick and dirty. We'll figure it all out. Here's the first thing, okay? You're all on silent, all right? But we do want to hear from you. And the best way to do that is in the chat window. So to the right of the actual viewer, where you see my wonderful head talking to you right now, is where you go. So if you're not seeing it, just hit a refresh on your browser. It'll pop right in. Type in your name. It's free. You don't have to set up an account if you don't want to. But if you're a regular, do what I do. Set up an account, and then it's always going to remember you're there, and you never have to do it again. You can be anybody you want to. You want to be Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck? You want to be Donald Trump? Or Joe Biden, you put that down as a name. I don't care. I just want the conversation. While we're doing that, I want to give a big shout out. Everybody tell us where you're calling from today, where you're at. Send us your questions. And we're going to have a lot of conversation going on here. So we're going to try to intermix, while we're talking. If I'm not talking, I'll be on the chat window. But if I am talking, I'm not going to be in the chat window. And it goes for the rest of us. So that's how it's going to work. If you really like this, but you have to go partway through, not to worry, we're going to send you a copy of the recording to the same email address you used to register. And when we do that, strongly suggest you share this content either on social or with your colleagues and peers whom you think need to hear some of the points that we're going to make today. So those are the ground rules, pretty straightforward. If you like today's session, go to vanillasoft.com. There's a lot more. If we go to the next slide, though, I love this one because this is where I get to kind of have fun and tease you on who we've got going here. So remember, it's all about turbocharging your appointment setting. So what did I do? This is what I did. It's very straightforward. I actually went and I said, who are the leaders of the industry's leading appointment setting organizations? These are them, folks. All right. So we have Nancy Calabrese, One of a Kind Sales, Rick Endralot, Virtual Causeway, David Krieger, Sales Roads, and Ryan Paris, Superhuman Prospecting. So what you should be doing right now is you should be going to LinkedIn and follow every single one of them, because if you have a question for any of them, that's how I would suggest you do it. Simultaneously, open up a browser and go to all their websites and check them out, because they're really, really smart. So that's that. Enough of this slide. I want to see the people. Bring them all up. Look at them. There they all are. On my screen, I'm going clockwise here. We've got David. We got Nancy. Bottom right, we got Ryan. Bottom left, we got Rick. Folks, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Great to be here.
Great being here.
Hey, Daryl.
Hi, Rick. They all look so happy, don't they? That's fantastic. And they're all snappy and well dressed. I mean, look at this. Before we went live, I was talking. We got David with his rugged, free flowing hair. He just looks like a guy you just want to hug. We got Ryan down there with the rugged, stubble happening. He's a man. We got Nancy. That is like she makes me look Trump change. She got like a interior design office there, the plants, the lights, and everybody knows, right? In video design 101, you always have a light or something on the background because it gives accent, and she's done that. She's a pro. And then we've got Rick. If you don't know Rick is a huge musician, guitar, been on stage, used to have his own school of music. He is a real interesting cat. So check them out. Folks, these are the cats we're going to talk with today. This is what's going to be covered. We're going to talk about why appointment setters are so important. All right, that's number one. They're going to share with us, and it's going to be interesting. I'd be curious to see if they all agree, how to make your team more effective. And then we're going to actually share and discuss various appointment setting strategies, and there's a lot of strategies out there. What's right for you? You got to figure it out. And then we're going to ask them point blank, what is your secret sauce? And then they'll come back and tell us what the top tip is. So if this goes well, you'll be able to turn around and actually apply all their lessons, and you will probably outperform them because you're really smart. So with that, let's talk about the basics. Let's go back to our panel and talk about why are appointment setters so important. So the role of appointment setting. Some would say that this is a thankless job. Some would say it's a hard job. Some would say it's a tough job to staff. Some would say you spend a lot of money with these people. Yet, for most organizations, it's this role that starts the entire revenue process. So let me ask you, I'll throw it there. I'm going to Nancy first. Always go ladies first. Nancy, in your opinion, why is this role so important?
No appointments, no sales. You need to have an appointment to get an opportunity to move the conversation along to generate new business.
It's that simple. No appointments, no sales.
Yeah, and it is by far, in my opinion, the most difficult part of the sales process. It should be nurtured. It should be developed. It's critical to any company's pipeline.
All right. So no appointments, no sales. As simple as that. Ryan, in your opinion, why are appointment setters so important? Is Nancy right, or is there another angle we hadn't considered?
I would definitely say she's right. If you don't have appointments, you don't have sales. I think specifically for outbound appointment setting, that type of appointment setting is one that is probably even harder than inbound. And that's because you're starting from zero. You're starting from no interest, and you actually have to generate that momentum. And having an outbound appointment setting team gives you control over your sales, because if you can target right and you can get your messaging right, then you have more control over your market than sometimes with inbound, when you have to compete versus, other vendors out there, versus some of the prior experiences that some of these folks have had. But if you have outbound, you have a little bit more influence that you can inject into the marketplace, and that can really help you give control of your destiny.
David, recently you and I had a conversation about just the role of the of an outsourced business development appointment setting firm, and whether it should be used or not, when was the right case to use it. Let me ask you this. Let me twist the question a little bit. Instead of just asking why are appointment setters so important, if I accept what Nancy is saying and what Ryan is saying, then when is the right time for me to consider using an external, expert like yourself or Rick or Nancy or Ryan versus doing it myself in-house? Because if it's truly this important, do I really want to outsource that?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the company and where they're at in their trajectory and what they have as far as their priorities and where they are getting sales right now. I think Nancy is right. Without appointments, there's no sales, but there's a little asterisk. I think a lot of times companies are, especially early in their life cycle or even later in their life cycle, they're getting sales through inbound, or they're getting sales through their network or referrals of current clients, and those are great ways to get sales. But sometimes a lot of companies, and we work with some 100-year-old companies. We have a few companies in the Fortune 500 that have just sort of developed processes around these, and it's been successful for them. But one thing that it's missing, as Ryan touched on, is a predictable element. And it's harder to create a predictable element to the sales process through inbound or through referrals. And it's much easier to do it through outbound, but you need to have the skill set, the discipline, the knowledge, as well as to some extent the patience in order to do it. And so I would argue, if internally you have somebody who's developed an SDR team or has really done appointment setting, has seen what the processes need to be like and the types of people you need to recruit, how to train them, how to coach them, and you have that skill set internally, then it's great to build something internally, because I think we will all argue this is such a critical aspect of any type of sales process. However, a lot of companies don't have that. They don't have somebody who's built these things internally. They don't have the residential know-how at the company. And in those cases, I would argue, at least in the beginning or potentially throughout, it's good to look outside to speed up the process of learning, speed up the process to developing a predictable outbound prospecting program. And in those cases, all of us on this panel, really can help our clients to speed up that process and make it successful pretty quickly.
So then, Rick, building off of what David and Ryan have said, let me ask you this question. If I'm a startup or an emerging company and we agree that the role is important, and to Nancy's point, no appointments, no revenue, am I wiser to build this organization in-house, or am I wiser, especially at that startup or emerging stage, to bring along an expert like yourself or anybody else here on the panel? What are your thoughts? What are your experiences on that? And I'd also love to hear you share maybe where you've got pushback on whatever point of view you're going to share with us.
Sure. So part of it, I think, depends. I mean, as we've already said, depending on the company, they might have some internal resources that actually understand this function. I think we're all going to agree that this function is really important. But for a startup or a scale up or a company that's trying to grow, in a lot of cases, it makes sense to outsource key business processes. It doesn't even have to be on the sales side of things, but there are certain processes that it might make sense to outsource to a trusted vendor or a partner rather than do in-house, because really you're focused on the product, especially in startup phases. You're focused on your product, you're focused on product market fit and understanding exactly who your customer is and whether or not the messaging resonates in the market. So being able to outsource is, in a lot of cases, a really good idea, because you can actually scale up pretty quickly. If you work with a vendor that actually already understands the process, you can get to market a lot faster because they understand those processes. And perhaps it's one of these things where you're starting up and you're using an outside vendor, and then down the road, as you grow and you mature and you've built those processes, then you might bring it in-house. We work with a lot of clients where we start off being their outsourced sales development function or appointment setting function. And then, 6 to 12 months down the road, after they've grown and they've brought some other resources in-house, they might bring it in-house, and we end up being, a supplemental kind of function versus being, that whole piece of it. So, definitely for startups and for companies that are in scale up mode, it's a type of thing where, if you're focused on product and you're focused on bringing a product to market, sometimes it makes sense to outsource that to somebody who's an expert and can get up and running quite quickly, and maybe help you get into some markets that you weren't able to get into otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So if I understand this right, let me just recap. So the conversation, as we say here, is why are appointment setters so important. Nancy makes the brilliant point that without the appointment setters, then you've got nothing happening at all. I mean, there's no revenue coming in, and that's a bad thing. So even though this position perhaps is not the most well paid and it has some turnover and it's often staffed by those starting out in their careers, it potentially is the most critical aspect of your revenue machine. Now, to Ryan's point, makes an excellent point. You have this combination of inbound and outbound, but outbound is where you really need to nail it, because these are often cold. Maybe they're account-based efforts. So the whole appointment setting element is where you need to have the most talented people, because you need to engage with them quickly, and make sure you can move them along. You set that appointment and hand it off maybe to an account executive. Spot on. I really like David's point though, where he was talking about scale, right? And the whole ability, the whole important and aspects of doing that. And he's right. I mean, because you can scale on your own as you try to figure it out, or you can scale by bringing in an external partner who's done this before. What you may not be aware of, folks, is that these people in front of you run organizations. Often their services that they provide are not done with a lot of margin. Why? Because when we hire these people, we like to get a deal. So the only way they can actually get our business is if they've optimized their process, which means to scale, processes are everything. And to Rick's point, I don't know what Rick's point was. I just like picking on him. No, to Rick's point is you can actually bring along a trusted partner to teach you how to do it. It's such a critical role. Think of them as an external advisor. Do not think of them as a commodity. Think of them as an expert, because that's what they are. And candidly, for especially when you're a startup or an emerging company, you're not, but they are. So that's that. Let me ask this question. Put it back to the panel. What's the biggest objection you've got, or the most consistent objection you've got to retaining you? So if they say, hey, David, you should use Sales Roads. Nancy, you should use One of a Kind. Ryan, you should use Superhuman Prospecting. Rick, you should use Virtual Causeway. What objection do you hear over and over again from the people you're trying to convince to become your clients? Go ahead.
I'll go. Taking too long, not getting the return on the investment. And basically what we see is there are many organizations out there that don't give it a chance to grow and to really make an impact. They're impatient. They want an immediate return on investment, even though we talk about expectations and laying the groundwork and so on, and you're building the foundation to your house. That's what we hear a lot.
David, what's the objections you get all the time?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the concept, and I love it actually when I hear this, because I think they understand the importance of the role. It's that, you guys are going to be speaking to our prospects, to our potential customers, and that's a lot of trust to put into your hands. Mm-hmm. And they're right. Because the amazing thing about this role is that in this role, we're talking to prospects and their potential customers every single day. And I think that's, it's an amazing aspect, and maybe we'll get to it, of why appointment setting is important, because it's not just getting the appointments. I think you can get a lot of knowledge and really understand who, what your customers are thinking, what pains they're having, whether they actually are your ideal customer, and the whole SDR appointment setting role is able to uncover that. And so we hear that. And when and one of the things we've done, and we've really taken that very seriously over the past 13 years that we've been building Sales Roads, and the people that we recruit, we have that in mind, that they are going to be representing our clients. And so we let our prospective clients, hear the role plays. They get to talk to the SDRs. They get to really hear them, because they're going to be part of their organization. They're going to be prospecting on their behalf. And so we really talk about the SDRs that we have, and then also bring them into the process so they'll get to know the SDRs, so they can build that level of trust, because it is a legitimate objection, and it's something that I think everyone should take, pretty seriously.
How about you, Rick? What's the objection you get over and over again, or at least that's notable, memorable?
Well, I'm actually glad David brought up, the whole concept of trust. I mean, when we first started Virtual Causeway back in 2001, people didn't trust, the whole concept of outsourcing. It was one of these things where, a lot of cases the objection would be, why wouldn't I not do this in-house? And so we've already discussed that. And then over the years, it's become, we have a technical product, for example, and I need to trust you guys to be able to convey that and be able to talk to my technical buyers. And so in a lot of cases, it's once again about building that trust and letting our clients understand that, if we set up our campaigns right and we have our processes down, we can provide the right type of message to the right contact at the right time. And it's all about, getting into this kind of shared partnership for a program, rather than just, handing something over to an outsourced partner. And, by working with our clients and working through some of those technical aspects up front, we can know enough, and we can actually start talking about business need and business pain with the prospects, and then build things, and then build some good leads that we hand over. And they're not always appointments. In a lot of cases, it could be doing some account-based profiling. It could be understanding more about a specific account that the AEs really want to know more about. So it may not be the actual output, might not be an appointment itself. It might be, some level of a lead, but whatever it is, it's some additional intelligence that's going to help the sales process.
Ryan, last kick of the can. Most memorable objection you've gotten?
Yeah, I think where are my sales?
Where am I?
I think that one sticks out. I think that comes to mind a lot, and I think of what Rick said, which is sales partnership. I tell a lot of our clients that, while this is a service business, it's not like getting your oil changed. There is a partnership where we become your outsourced team, not just a service that delivers you appointments. And so one of my favorite parts about this type of business is the amount of education and sales education on outbound that we really get to help our clients learn and also learn about their business. So it's give and take. We're learning about them, but a lot of times, while some folks do outsource because they know what they're doing and they just need more time, many outsource because they might not know how to do it or they've never done it before. So helping them understand how outbound works specifically is typically the way that we find our wins and our clients' wins ultimately, right? It's through helping them understand what especially outbound appointment setting is and how that might be different from their expectations with an inbound sale or inbound lead.
All right, so let's go on to the next slide because I want to recap what I just heard because it dovetails so nicely in this next slide, which is how do we make your team more effective? So think about that, right? So when we just were on that last talking point, this is what I heard the crew say here. Talk about you're taking too long. Where are my sales? What people are understanding is that, this is the process, your whole sales success. And to do that, you actually need to lay the right foundation. Otherwise, you're not going to have that same success. And that comes down to making sure your campaigns are configured right to succeed. And that in the end, you've got to trust, whether you're trusting your staff, trusting your operations people, or trusting your hired experts. It all comes down to that. So let me ask you this, folks. Would you give your own in-house team the same comments within the same timelines that you would give to an external team? The one thing I always find so interesting is that we will provide excuses for our own success. We will recognize our shortcomings. We will go externally for that advice, exactly as Rick was talking about. And then immediately we hold them to an impossible standard. That doesn't work. If you're really serious about it, then it's all about making the system effective, whether it's all in-house, it's all outsourced, or it's a partnership thereof. So with that, I want to hear, how do we make your team more effective? David, if I ask you for, what's one tip or trick you've seen when you're building your teams or working with your clients and their teams, what was one way on the appointment setting side that you were able to make them more effective?
Yeah, so one thing, and this will come back in my top tip at the end because it actually came from somebody on my team. But, even just the way that the question is phrased, it feels like a lot of us as sales leaders or, the folks who are listening right now, they're trying to make the appointment setting programs more effective. And what can they do and what can they think of and what is the new strategy they can put in place or the new cadence that they can slip in and whatnot. And I think that is looking at the question in the wrong way. And one of the ways that we found to optimize our campaigns, optimize our company, is by asking our team what can be more effective. And so the folks who are on the front lines, it's just amazing to hear what, I might have thought was an amazing call approach or amazing way to handle an objection or, amazing email. When they come back and they say, listen, it's not working, and here's why, and here's my suggestion. And really listening to it is a great way to optimize a program. I think a lot of folks have alluded to it. This is a journey. Making a great appointment setting program team does not happen overnight. You iterate it, you work on it, you create a culture, you create a team, you create some processes, but you have to have inputs. And the great way to have input is hearing from your team, hearing what's working, what's not working, and then actualizing those suggestions. And for me, just the gains that we have by having that perspective and building that culture throughout our organization has been critical in optimizing all of our campaigns.
All right, I'm going to go to you next, Ryan. And the reason I want to go to you next is because you have been really transparent. You will take reports from your systems and you will publish them on social media. I've seen it over and over again where you're sharing your actual effectiveness, your stats, how many calls, how many conversations, how many appointments set, and you're trending and you're monitoring. And it's been interesting because I've also watched you get a lot of accolades for that. I've also seen you get pushback. But I'm assuming the reason you do that beyond being transparent and advocating for the role of appointment appointment setting and the need of it is so that you could be more effective. And not just you, but the entire community, the entire tribe. So I'm going to go to you, Mr. Transparent, Mr. Here's the stats. What have you learned when it comes to making your team more effective?
Yeah, I think that what David said is true about going to your team and hearing, because they're on the ground level. I guess the way that I would phrase a lot of that on making your team effective is using a model that Stephen Covey used in, I think it was his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that talks about sharpening the saw. And sharpening the saw is really about consistently and constantly refining your processes and using kind of benchmarks of measurement to see how you've progressed. And I think that's what it comes down to, is when we first engage with a client, we're talking about the first month, never expect an ROI, because a lot of that is market research. Even if it's a similar client than what we've had, there's always variables that make them unique. And so we're always about learning. And so while we have goals in mind, we want to completely crush those goals, we take a snapshot of where we are, and then we look at the whole gamut in order to scrutinize every part of it. Is the script right? Is the target right? Is the appointment setter right? Is the value proposition correct? And so all of these things are consistently under the magnifying glass, so that the idea is the process is improving, rather than saying, hey, this is a house that needs to be built. It's actually a fire that needs to be bigger and bigger. So with our transparency, sorry.
No, it's all
caught you there.
That's all good. That was all good.
With our transparency, I think, this is really what we're getting. And, I don't think it's the end either. Like, I want to continue to build on those results. And so getting feedback helps us to see, hey, what are other people getting out in the marketplace, and how can we continually make it better for our clients?
And I love that. So what I'm hearing you say is you're also comparing yourself against the marketplace, not just you against the client expectations or you against your own expectations or your own goals. So you're actually going external as a I don't know, a testing, a sounding board. Just it's a benchmark. So I like that.
Yeah.
So you're not just sharing with the tribe, you're also hoping they will share back with you so you can compare and contrast. That's fantastic.
Yeah, a little bit.
Nancy, I wanted to ask you, because I know part of your business model. I know a big part of what you do sometimes, not just the whole appointment setting, but it's also sometimes you just run the whole show for them. So talk to me. What have you seen work well? What advice can you give to others when it comes to appointment setting on making the whole thing just way more effective?
Yeah, we are really big believers in ongoing sales training. Appointment setting is selling, and it's interesting. I speak with many people that don't view an appointment setter as a salesperson. They definitely are, and they've got the challenge to go to close in a shorter period of time than full cycle sales. So the continual weekly training, we deconstructing the calls. If you have the ability to record calls, playing them back in a group setting so they get input, and to everybody else's point, going directly to your team and asking what's working, what are you struggling with, is this word not working, what should we be doing? There are eyes and ears first tier in the weeds. The other thing we do that makes our team more effective is to actually collaborate with the clients. And that's so important. I think somebody brought this up earlier, that you can't look at this as a commodity. And the more the client gets engaged with the team, gets to know the caller, the better job we do in executing the campaign. So it's feedback all sides of the operation, and we see the benefits of the ongoing training. I've been in business, I don't want to say how many years, but I always come out of a training session, I've got a new nugget. It's fresh. We're going to try it.
All right, Rick, I know this is something that since I've known you, you have how want I put it? You have dwelled on. It's something that keeps you awake at night. It could be because you're cheap. It could be because you're just really smart. It could be because you're trying to make sure you get the most margin. Ironically, though, everything I just said there, yes, I'm teasing. Rick and I known each other for many, many years. But those attributes should actually be the attributes of every sales manager. So you do need to be frugal. You do need to be cost effective. You do need to optimize your operations. So what have you seen work above and beyond what we've heard from Nancy and David and Ryan on how to make your team more effective?
So first of all, I don't think I would say it was cheap.
Cheap? You wouldn't say that?
No, I wouldn't say cheap. I would say that you have to understand costs, right? I mean,
that's good.
For anybody who's running a department, anybody who's running a division, anybody who's running a business, you have to have a good handle on what your costs are and what your margins are. And somebody said it earlier. I think it was Ryan said, when your biggest objections was, hey, where are my sales? You guys have been working for a week. How come you haven't closed a couple million in sales? I think data is extremely important throughout the whole process. And part of that is helping to set expectations. So if you're working with a client or you're working with a product that has an 18-month sales cycle, just because I've set you an appointment doesn't mean that all of a sudden the sales cycle is gone. I mean, you still have to work through the process. And as long as you're tracking the data, which could include also financial data, Daryl, since you said I'm cheap, but as long as you're tracking data and you're collecting data, you're using that to constantly work on your process, improve your process, and make sure that there's a really good closed feedback loop with the team. So if it's an internal team, make sure that you're spending a lot of time with your product team, you're spending time with the sales team and the marketing team, and that the appointment setters, if they're your SDRs or whatever their role is, that they're getting that face time, but they're also able to provide that feedback and make sure that it's timely and accurate. And then that way you can adjust your process and be more effective.
Okay, so I've been writing nonstop here. Handy dandy pen comes in handy. Some things are still analog. Let's see what we got going on here. So on a recap of how to make your team more effective, this is what we got here. David is saying, and I love this, it's as simple often as asking your team for suggestions. And you'll be shocked because candidly, he's right. They're the ones on the phones or deep into the conversations. They see the handoffs. They see the stumbling way more than the manager does. They're living it personally. So asking them for suggestions is inspired. How many times have we all forgotten just to go down to the rank and file and say, what would you do? Because we all think that we're supposed to know the answers because we're management. Brilliant. Ask the team. We got Ryan saying, I love it. He's quoting Stephen Covey with his saw reference, with sharpening the saw. Iteratively refining the process. And I know I speak to this all the time when it comes in sales and marketing, and it applies here 100%. I always talk about A/B testing. It's a marketing thing that's become a sales thing because that's what you need to be doing. Iteratively refining, iteratively making it better. So here's what you know. If I do that iteration, maybe this time it's not as good as it was the last time, but now I have that knowledge. So now it points me in the right direction to go to make it better. So don't just assume your process is static, never changing, and optimized the way it is. Continually improve it. Nancy's got a gold mine of this, isn't she? She went where nobody else went. She talked about the importance of sales training. And that is so true. Think about it. They're the frontline people. What do they do when they answer the phone? Are they trained on that? Do they know how to get their attention in 7 seconds, 12 seconds, 30 seconds? Do they know how to handle objections? Are they prepared? Have they done initial research if that's what the sale requires? Do they know how to take control of the conversation? Are they overwhelmed? Are they intimidated? Have you dealt with their mindset? Training is everything. And I love that Nancy brought up the thing that we don't always talk about, which is we don't think of them as salespeople sometimes because they're not an account executive. Yet they're the first one talking to them. Nancy's nailed it. And the whole idea of deconstructing the call is incredible. It's all about getting that team feedback. That's brilliant. And then Cheap Rick talks about understanding costs. It's all about understanding costs, all right? And the idea that you can actually make your team more effective. If you can lower those costs, you know what you can do now? You can either pocket that money, which is one way, or you can redirect that money to reinvest back into the team. So now you've got more tools, more equipment, more training, right? More oversight. So that's how you make it more effective. So that's cool. This was great. I had fun on this one, guys. Let's go to the next one. Appointment setting strategies. I'm looking forward to this one because there are lots of different ways you can tackle appointment setting. Whether we talked about, just talking out loud. Are you doing it 100% outbound? Are you using a combination of outbound with inbound? Are you using an account-based approach? And then there's the whole idea of your sales methodologies. The sales methodologies influence as well. It depends on, am I selling a product or am I selling a service? Am I selling something that's transactional or am I selling something that's really high ticket price? Is it a short sales cycle or a long sales cycle? There are lots of ways to approach it. So, Rick, since I gave you such a hard time and I did not enjoy doing that at all, I'm going to get you first kick of the can. Talk to me about some appointment setting strategies that you have seen work, and maybe for context, because I know you've been doing this since the early 2000s at your business. Look at maybe some teams who were maybe struggling, then they engaged you, and then they skyrocketed, and maybe share some of the strategies you use to achieve those results.
Sure, and I'll try to change my nickname now from Cheap Rick to something else. So I think the first thing when people think about appointment setters, even backing up a little bit, when people think about the appointment setting function, companies need to remember that it's not something that should be on its own, right? So it's not a silo. It's something that's, it's a part of the sales function in most cases. But ultimately, you have to make sure that the appointment setting function or the sales development function is integrated with other things that you're doing. So as you're looking at strategies and ways to be more effective, and you're looking at, just ways to be, better appointment setters or have your team be more effective, how can you integrate better with all the other stuff that's going on? You've got a marketing team that's doing both inbound and outbound. You've got sales teams that might be working on ABM strategy. So really thinking a lot about, what are the human and digital touch points as you're moving somebody through the buyer's journey, and mapping those points, and then figuring out where do you get involved then for this SDR team or this appointment setting team. And understanding as well, what are those key content pieces at each of those stages that will help you move people through the cycle? Because when we're looking at somebody who's more top of funnel, you're obviously going to be providing different information, and the next step will be different than if it's somebody who's middle of funnel or lower in the funnel. So really thinking about how you can integrate both the human and digital touch points, and then map that buyer's journey, and then figure out where you fit, and then help move people along through with content. I think that's key.
Nancy, what are your thoughts on how to actually make that are some very effective appointment setting strategies? I like Rick's idea of mapping the content. I know it sounds obvious, but so many people do not do that, and they're using the wrong content at the wrong time. What have you seen work really, really well?
Well, there's I think a bunch of people out there that don't believe in scripting, and we very much do. Taking a script, becoming an actor or an actress, internalizing it really helps the appointment setter make the introduction and not have to really think about what they're going to say. That's number one. But number two is making the call all about them. Having the person on the phone talk about what their issues are. And we believe here that in our mantra, if you will, we never go into sell mode. That's our approach. We want the other person to let us know, do they have an issue? And if they have an issue, what is it? And get them all emotional, because people buy based on emotion. And then finally, I said this earlier, having the ability to record calls. Now, not every state you can do it, but the states you can, really encourage that you use that tool as a training tool so you can play back. So much is gained from that kind of coaching. And it really does improve performance over time. I mean, I could go on and on, but I think you want other people to talk.
I do want other people to talk, but I love that you go on and on. And I'm looking forward to getting your top tip, Ashley, because I know you've got so much up here and so much experience. I want to see what you say is your top tip. Ryan.
Okay.
So Ryan, again, going back to all the data that you share and you constantly measure, which of course is part of your Stephen Covey methodology, I have to think you've done some serious testing of various appointment setting strategies. So what have you deemed to work well?
Yeah, so it's funny hearing everyone else in the similar industry, and we haven't really talked before because I see the truth in what everyone said. I think just everyone's got their unique perspective, and for us, our primary service is the calls. We have, other channels that we can reach out, but with the primary appointment setting service being through a person-to-person call, usually we start with two primary questions, which is, what is your target and what do you want to say to your target? And those really help us to kind of funnel and hone in on what it is that we should be saying, and as time goes on, it sounds as though the rest of the folks here have even more experience than I do, but even with the last 3 years we've been in business, like every time we do a campaign, we learn something new that we can take to the next one, and so using that target and messaging, what we're able to do then is take prior data, like you said, and prior messaging, prior value propositions to then match it up with the marketplace that you're trying to go after, and then just continue that path to consistent refinement from there. So those two primary strategies, I think, really help you to define, or primary variables, target and messaging, help you to hone in on your strategy and what it's going to be for that marketplace.
So David, I just heard Ryan say that everybody here has more experience than he does. So I think what he's just said was you specifically are really old. That's what I heard Ryan say. Yeah.
Distinguished.
And I'm looking at the hair, and as laissez-faire as it looks, I'm seeing some salt and pepper in that, buddy. So with that, what do you got to add on to these? I mean, that's a tough act to follow. You're last on this one, but talk about some appointment setting strategies you see really have a consequential impact.
Yeah, I know these are all great tips, and definitely, doing strategies that haven't worked have probably added to this salt. I don't know if I think that's being generous, Daryl, that salt and pepper. I think I am maybe legitimately gray at this point. So, but so here is a few things. So one thing, and I think Ryan mentioned this, is about the target. And one of the things we've found is that it's intuitive, but I can't tell you how many times people miss it. And it's just making sure you've got a bespoke list. I mean, we talk to our clients and they say they've got a great list and we'll be able to call their list, and they give it to us and it's old or it's not well targeted. And so really taking the time to really refine the list, make sure it's matching who your ideal customer profiles are, because one of the beauties of appointment setting is you're actually getting to go out and proactively reach out to exactly who you want to speak to, not the other way around with inbound, which is basically just with people coming to you. So really making sure that the time on the phone and that your appointment setters and SDRs are calling the right people. But then really, it's tough to make that a reality. And so one of the tips that I would suggest to people is, there are some great lead sources out there, ZoomInfo, Seamless, LeadIQ. But one of the things we found, especially over the past few months with people who have been changing jobs or being laid off, or really the emphasis on trying to make sure we've got direct dials or cell phones, is using a combination of those tools. So we'll sometimes pull from Seamless, right, from LinkedIn, and get a list so that we know that the LinkedIn profiles are up to date and they're hopefully still with that company. And then we'll append that with Zoom and do a double verify. And then we can also use some of the refinements and selects that Zoom have, and really spending some budget up front and really making sure that list is bespoke and great, sets your sales team up for success. And I think sometimes that's a misstep and a missed opportunity for a lot of programs.
So this
and would also, if you take that on, would give you less gray hair. So.
Well, I love when people say I have gray hair, because I think I'm well beyond the gray into just the solid white. So that's okay. It's funny because if you ever catch me on a weekend when I don't have the fancy product in the hair and I look like a Beatles with the mop top, it is 100% white. So brother, I feel your pain. I'm there for you. And frankly, I no longer like Ryan. He's way too young for this call. We have to boot him off.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Beatles, had a great look. Never
They did.
minimized that. I've
No,
got
but it's a mop top.
on the wall behind me.
Well, you got good taste with that, man. I tell you, he's got a few gold records on his shelf.
Yeah.
So what I like about this on the appointment setting strategy side was how varied you guys were, but everything else was impactful. So if you're listening to this, let me recap what I heard, and you think about what makes sense in your organization, right? So Rick talked about that cross-pollination, if we will, with the other teams, with marketing, with product, with sales, because that sharing, even if it's just periodic, really helps them with their storytelling on the phones and how they engage. You also talked about the importance of matching the funnel, or top of the funnel versus the middle of the funnel. And that was really, really critical. Content itself can be a fantastic vehicle to drive the conversation and ensure there's another conversation, which is really the whole point of doing this, right? Nancy, I love it. Nancy keeps on doing it. Last time she went to training. This time she's talking about scripting. Scripting is something that we may agree on or disagree on. I'm with Nancy. I'm all in on scripting. And when I say scripting, I know I like the term call guide, right? It's a guide. You don't have to say verbatim what this is. That's my point of view, but it is a guide. And when somebody is new on the job, having that to lean on is brilliant, and also ensures that they're on message. Because sometimes, you may have your team selling product A in the morning, product B in the afternoon, or selling to one geography in the morning, a different geography in the afternoon. That script ensures that they don't flub things. What I really liked about her as well, though, was that the fact that she was in no sell mode. In other words, right? They were just about how do we make it all about them? It's creating an emotional bond. That made it way more effective. They got the results they wanted. Instead of, they ditched the pitch and made it about the prospect. That's what it's all about. Ryan was fantastic. He went right in, what's the target and what's the message? I could suggest, do you have your ideal customer profile? Because if you do, then you know the target and you know the message. So if I were to piggyback on what Ryan's saying, I would say, make sure you've got that ICP. But what I really liked about him was he was able to say, okay, that was my target and that was my message before, this is what worked. Let's use that as a starting point. So we're not starting cold. That was brilliant. And David brought it back. The whole idea of the bespoke list. We haven't talked about lists, but he's right. You can never be successful if your list is irrelevant, if your list is out of date, if your list is factually incorrect and they're making wrong numbers or bounced emails or whatever it might be. And the whole idea of using two, I had this conversation this morning with somebody where I said, we were just at the point of renewing our Zoom info. We went through a whole process, our contract, and we went on Modern Sales Pros and all the Rev Genius and Revenue Collective and everywhere else. And we're asking all the people. And that's what we saw over and over again. The success really depended on really kind of having two apps, making that investment so you can cross-pollinate, use them both. So those are your tried and proven strategies from the folks who know what they're doing. All right, we're going to go rapid fire now. We're through the hard stuff. Next one up is what's your secret sauce? Not to be confused with what's your top tip. That's how we're going to end it all. So what's the secret sauce to appointment setting success? Rick, we'll let you go first. What's the secret sauce overall? Take it away,
I'm going to steal this from David. I think having lists and being able to target up front and be getting in front of the right people is important. If you can't get that, then it doesn't matter what your message is, doesn't matter how good you are on the phone, doesn't matter how good your scripting is. If you're talking to the wrong person or you're marketing to the wrong person, you're done.
David, secret sauce. What's the secret sauce? You can't say list, apparently. Rick ripped you off.
I did. I tried to. Thank you. That's why I go first, so I can steal somebody else's.
I love it. Go for it, David.
So I'm going to be totally annoying and sidestep your question, Daryl.
Of course.
But I'm going to tell
like
you,
the pro that you are.
That's just the type of guy I am. So here's the thing, and I alluded to this in a previous answer, and I don't think that there is a specific secret sauce that can be laid out on a call like this. It's kind of like, the recipe to Coke. Not that I, my secret sauce is quite at that level. If it were, maybe I'd have less gray hair. But but I think it's so many different things, right? And you've got it's finding the right mixture for your company, for you as a manager, for you as a team, the type of culture that you're building, the type of processes that you're putting into place, the type of coaching that you have, like Nancy said, the type of training infrastructure, and where magic happens and you really start seeing this engine that is unbelievable and has really been the key to success of all the big SaaS companies, Salesforce, HubSpot, all the, HubSpot, who's an inbound company, has created an amazing outbound program. But when you get all of those components and put them together into the right components for those companies, and they're different, I'll tell you, between different companies, is where the magic happens. And so I think just looking at this as a journey and attending webinars like this and reading and getting the right people in place allows you to create that secret sauce for your organization. So there's my sidestep question.
I don't think you sidestepped it. I think it was actually pretty good. But, with all respect, David, it wasn't as good as what Nancy's about to say. What's the secret sauce, Nancy?
I think I'm lucky being the only woman on this panel. In my opinion, the secret sauce is sounding very unsalesy and being unattached to the outcome. So our approach is to be different. And we do everything we can not to have the sales wall go up. So it's worked for us. And the value of taking that approach, it makes prospecting more fun and more relaxing. And you get appointments.
I told you, David. Did I not tell you that she was going to rock the boat? I told you she was going to rock the boat, and she never lets me down. Ryan, you get the good joy of following Nancy. What is the secret sauce?
It's always a lose-lose if I'm doing that. No, so I would say for me, I would say that I disagree a little bit with David. I would say that while it's all important, I would say you have to prioritize what's going to convert you the highest, like those tasks. You only have so much time in a day. So the secret sauce to me is about priority. I mean, appointment setting takes a lot of time because you don't have a software that you can add users. You have to add more people, and those type of services have to be repeated at scale. So in order for that to work, you have to be able to prioritize what's going to make the most impact. To me, targeting and list building is objective. You either have a good list or you don't, and there's enough tools and data out there to get you that good list. To me, the secret sauce is all about the ability to have a strong conversation with the prospect, and that's a combination of the right people mixed with the right messaging, and to Nancy's point, actually a script. And that's where you're going to get the highest conversion, and you have the most ability to convert higher and have more success for your team.
Ryan bringing the conflict. First time. I like that. That's good stuff. He's disagreeing with David, and David's the nicest guy to disagree with in the world, so that's kind of cool.
Took us an hour.
Took us an hour to get there, but we got there. But the whole point of I like his point, though, prioritizing what makes the biggest impact, right? There's only so much you can do, so let's start with the prioritization. So that's what Ryan was saying. Nancy, of course, is, I like it, make it the unsale. And she makes up a really interesting point about selling fun. All right. Make selling fun and enjoyable. And that all comes down to mindset. I love the whole premise of go for no. It's a mindset, right? I'm actually looking for a rejection. In fact, I have a goal of being rejected 10 times this hour. And with Rick on this webinar, I'm sure I'll achieve it. So that's the whole point of the mindset, being, as she said, unattached to the outcome. So I really like Nancy's point there. Of course, Rick he's in on the list. And that might be contrarian a little bit to what Ryan's thinking. He's thinking that's whatever. It's, of course you need lists. But his point is, if I'm not talking to the right people, then everything else I do is for naught. And of course, David was interesting. I like in fact, I came up with a word for what David described using a word he actually used, which was recipe. What's the right mix of tools and approaches? You're always, a recipe is never the same if you do it, right? You're always making it a little bit better. A pinch more of this, a dash more of that. You're always looking to get that taste a little bit better. What's the right mix? That's the secret sauce. Okay. I said we're going rapid style. Now we truly are going rapid style. We're going to go lightning. Give 30 seconds max each. It's what is your top tip? And we're going to start with Ryan. Ryan, top tip, go.
Yeah, I would say, based on what's most important or most priority, which is to have that ability, find that ability to convert a conversation, is for all the appointment setters out there and for all the sales leaders, you have to think you are on the same level as the person you're calling. Too many times we think that we're below that decision maker. And if we talk like that, then they're going to treat us like that, which is they treat us as if they don't need us. So if we act confident and we're on the same level as them, they'll listen to us more and we can have more influence and impact in the conversation.
Ryan's top tip, it's all about the mindset. You are equal to the person you're calling. Stop being intimidated by them. Have a conversation. Your peers. I love it. It's about confidence. David, top tip.
Yeah, so I think, a lot of times we focus on what's happening on the call, and that's definitely important, or we focus on objection handling and things like that. But going back, not even just to the list, but who we're prospecting into, one of the things, we found is a lot of times, before we've implemented this and started training on it, our SDRs were calling people, and it would take them, 9 times maybe to get the person on the phone, and they realized that either they weren't the right person, or potentially they weren't even there anymore because their voicemail might still be set up, but they were no longer with the company. And so one of the things that just listening to our SDRs on the front lines, one great, she's actually a saucer. She's a strategic optimization specialist. So she's on the phones, but she's actually tasked with trying to find some of these optimization opportunities. Is she came up with when in doubt, zero out. So on your first call into a prospect, zero out. Try to talk to the gatekeeper. Talk to them. Make sure that that person is still there. Even ask them if they have oversight over XYZ or whatnot, and really try to confirm before you spend a whole bunch of dials and a whole bunch of effort going after the wrong person. Make sure that you've got the right person in your list and that you're going after them in the right way, and then try to gather as much other information you can. Sometimes gatekeepers are amazing. They'll give you cell phones, they'll give you direct dials, and so really talking to that person on that first call, if you don't get the person on the phone, can really increase your success.
When in doubt, zero out. I love it. That's brilliant. Rick, your top tip, my friend.
Thank you for letting me go before Nancy, by the way. I was worried.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
All right.
I'm going to have to top all of you guys. Go ahead.
No pressure, Nancy. No pressure. Actually, I love this conversation, though. Just can I say how much it's awesome that I hear you guys saying a lot of the things that we do. We've been using when in doubt, zero out as a key for our training for 15 years. It's awesome. We do the same thing. One thing we haven't talked a lot about today, which I think, if we're talking about, the top tip is technology. We've talked a little bit about data. We've talked about some of the upfront stuff, but find a technology platform that can help you and support your process. So as you build out this function, as you have people doing appointment setting, as you get better and better doing it, figure out what that process is, and then make sure you have the technology to support it. So that could be, a sales engagement platform. It could be CRM. I know all of us are using sales engagement platforms, and we've had a lot of success with one called VanillaSoft you might have heard of, and just getting that right technology that can support you and that can actually enable your team versus be something that holds them back. I think that's really important.
And I love it. We haven't even talked once about technology. Clearly, I'm trying to make sure we're not advocating for VanillaSoft, but if you're in the market for technology, VanillaSoft.com. But you're right. Technology is huge. I know when I became CRO, the first thing I did was I invested in 2 additional technology pieces for the SAC. It can make the difference in everything. I love it. That's a good point. Thank you, Rick. Nancy, last word. We opened you through you. We're closing with you. What's your top tip?
Okay. Cold calling is not dead. If you're not doing it, you're leaving money on the table, and the human conversation always wins.
Ooh. Hashtag money right there, or you might say mic drop. Ironically, she opened up by saying, if you're not doing appointment setting, you're not making money. And she's closing by saying, if you're not doing it. I know. She opened the way she closed. I love it. All right. So the recaps there, right? Rick said technology. Nancy said cold calling is not dead. If you're not doing it, you're leaving money on the table. David, of course, said when in doubt, zero out. And Ryan said it's all about your mindset. You're on the same level as your prospect. Make sure you have that confidence to call and have that one-on-one conversation. My friends, we have got Rick Angela, we have David Krieger, we have Nancy Calabrese, we have Ryan Paris. These guys are amazing. Rick is with Virtual Causeway. David is with Sales Roads. Nancy is with One of a Kind Sales. Ryan is with Superhuman Prospecting. This is your all-star team when it comes to how to turbocharge your appointment setting. My name is Daryl Praill, folks. I've had fun here today. I hope you have too. For more on this, for more on these people, follow them on Twitter, follow them on LinkedIn, go to the websites, or let's just make it easy. Follow me on LinkedIn and ask me all about them, and I'll hook you up. I look forward to seeing you online. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. We shall talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.